Hi everyone, thank you for joining us today. My name is Rima Musa and I'm the Cybersecurity Awareness Coordinator here at UC Santa Barbara. As you may know, it's National Cybersecurity Awareness Month throughout the month of October, and the importance of cybersecurity in daily life is perhaps greater than ever. Technology alone can't always protect our computers and information, and being aware of information security issues and following best practices are excellent ways to protect yourselves, your family, and the UC community. And attending sessions like these is a great way to increase your awareness and help yourself and your community be cyber safe. Given the current COVID-19 pandemic and life online conditions that we've been privy to for the past few months, all of our programming this month is entirely virtual and system-wide across the UC system. We have events from many of our different campuses across the UC system that you are totally free to attend. And next week will be our last week of programming, as it's the last week of October. If you would like to check out some of the other great webinars and virtual programming that we have going on this month, please feel free to check out this link that I'm about to send out through the chat, and it's been sent. And you can register for any of the remaining sessions that we have coming up, and you register via Zoom, and then you can add them to whatever calendar you use so you don't miss them. Today we'll be hearing from Dr. Chad Spensky, who is the founder and CEO of Authenticate. And we'll be hearing from him for a different sort of talk than maybe the talks that you might have attended from his Monday session. So this will be all about the state of authentication. But before we hear from him, I'd like to briefly introduce him. And as I do that, he'll get his screen sharing all set up, so we're ready to go. And then we'll hear from him, and we'll save the last 15 or so minutes for Q&A, and you can share any and all questions that you have through the Q&A function, which you can find at the bottom of your screen in that little Q&A button. And we will try to get through as many as we can before we wrap up at 5 o'clock. So a little bit about Chad. Dr. Chad Spensky is a computer security researcher, entrepreneur, and educator who is passionate about using technology to make people's lives easier and their digital systems more secure. Chad has more than 10 years of research experience and is a lifetime hacker. Formerly, he was a member of the technical research staff at the MIT Lincoln Laboratory and has since continued to help them solve some of the Department of Defense's toughest cybersecurity problems. He received his PhD from UCSB in 2020, and he also possesses a master's in computer security from the University of North Carolina at Chapel Hill, as well as a bachelor's in mathematics, a bachelor's in computer science, and a minor in economics from the University of Pittsburgh. So thank you so much for joining us, Chad, for this session, and the floor is all yours.
All right, so hopefully everyone is seeing a full screen of the slide deck now.
Yep.
All right, so the topic of this is the state of authentication. So this is kind of near and dear to my heart. This is what I've decided to dedicate my career to, because I think this current state of authentication is not that great. So I will sort of, in this talk, I have a couple of goals. First, I want to let you know who I am. I think it's important to know, if I have any credibility. I give you some overview on what authentication is, some of the mechanisms that we use, what it means to be authenticated, and then the current state, where we're at now, and where I think the future is going. So first, who the heck am I? Why am I the one giving this talk? So my journey actually started all the way back in middle school. My brother was older than me, went to college, and found this place where you could download illegal games. So I got into computer security for, I guess, either the wrong or right reasons, whichever way you look at it. But I started modding, like hardware hacking, Xboxes, and doing a bunch of crazy stuff that, I don't know if the legal department agrees with. I ended up going to college for computer science and math. And then after I got my master's, I went to MIT Lincoln Laboratory, where I was a researcher doing mostly offensive security. So, hacking things, breaking things, and figuring out why they don't work. And then I since came back to UCSB, where I just finished up my doctorate, and decided to start my own company to solve some of the problems that I've seen throughout my career that in my mind are still not fixed. So the problem of authentication is quite simple. Everyone should not have access to everything. That would be chaos, it'd be anarchy. So the idea of authentication is that you only want to permit authorized users to access resources. So we'd have a list of people who have access, and in this case, just me. And the sort of barrier that occurs here, and one of the major complications, is that we have the real world where there is me, the human, and then we have the digital world where we have, door locks and phones and computers and websites and cars, and we're somehow trying to bridge this world so that the digital things can interact with the humans, but only the right humans, right? So it wouldn't be great if anybody could come in my house and drive my car and use my laptop. So we need some way to authenticate, yes, this is Chad. So traditionally, there's sort of been three ways to authenticate a person. You can use their brain, so you can ask them things that only they would know, right? So you use the memory in the human, and that proves that, hey, if they know the password, it must be them because no one else would possibly know it. Something you have, so that could be your key that you use to get into a house, a smart card, a UB key, things like that. That's a physical possession. Or what you are. So these are biometrics, right? My fingerprint is supposed to be unique. My iris should be unique. My blood pressure, pulse, all those things sort of embody who I am. So you could use those, and computers can read that data to kind of verify, yeah, this is Chad. So first, let's look at what you know. This is a secret, is what most people know as a password, but this is something that's going to be a shared secret. So the computer knows it, you know it, or the website knows it, and you know it, and you're not supposed to share it with anybody else. So you keep that secret, it's just in your brain, and that's how you can regurgitate and say, yeah, I'm the person I want to know. And then when you forget that, which is inevitable, you use your personal details. So these are supposed to be things that only I would know. So my mother's maiden name, what street I grew up on, my first pet's name. And there's flaws in all of these. Sometimes I pick passwords that other people would guess. Sometimes my personal details are public. So there's some downfalls. So for some other mechanisms, we've used what you have, right? So the key is dominated. I mean, I don't know a door on earth that doesn't have a key in it. And that seems to work quite well. We've then moved on to smart cards. So at UCSB, this is what you're going to use to get into all the buildings and your dorms. There's these RSA tokens. Phones are a great what you have. Everyone has one. And the UB keys. Looking at what you are, these have become much more popular recently thanks to smartphones. So you can do voice recognition. I know Alexa and Google Homes both do this. Iris recognition, face recognition, like Face ID, your fingerprint, the gait, the way you walk is apparently also unique. Your location. There's a bunch of different things that sort of indicate who you are. And these all have good things about them. The one thing about passwords, things that you know, is that you always have them with you. So that's very convenient, right? I don't have to, when I leave the house, I don't have to grab my password on the way out, right? It's in my head. It's going to come to work with me. The things that you have, though, have no mental burden. So they're not always with you, but you don't have to remember the complicated password. You just grab your keys and you're going to be able to get into your office. And the things that what you are, that's nice. You just be you, right? Hey, I'm Chad. Every day, all day. Don't have to worry about a thing. I'm going to always be me. But there's some bad things. So the bad things with using what you know is that you have to remember it, and you have to always remember it, right? Even though you didn't use that password for the past 3 years, don't forget it because they're going to ask you it. The things with what you have to always have it, right? So if this is the key, I mean, I'm sure I'm not the only person who has forgot my keys in my house or lost them at the beach or something like that. If you don't have them, you're not getting in. Hotel keys seem to be much easier to lose for some reason than normal keys. And then what you are, what have you temporarily changed? Say, for example, you have to have a mask on all the time, right? Face ID, not so hot. Or what if you get a sunburn? I actually had an instance where I was trying to go through customs in Mexico, and I was rock climbing the day before and didn't have fingerprints. So kind of freaked people out. And then sort of what I call the ugly. So these are the things for all the three factors that I think are really dangerous from a security perspective. So the what you know, we've already butted up with quite a bit with passwords, that you have to be better than a computer. So it's all gravy if my password can just be, my favorite word, whatever that is, and I use it for everything. That's not the case though. Computers are really good at cracking passwords, and then we have password reuse attacks. So now we have this huge mental burden where my password is like random, and I have to remember this random number. What you have, what if it gets stolen, right? If you steal my house key, you can go rob me blind. I have no way to stop you. You have the only token that gets you in my house. And then what you are, this one's really weird. You can never share it or revoke it, right? So there are some instances where I would like to share something with you. I want to let you take my car, to the mall or something, right? I can't, if it uses biometrics, I can't give you my biometric. I can't say like, here, borrow my face, take this to the mall. You can use my car. And even worse, you can't revoke it. So on all of these devices today, you have effectively like your biometric credentials. So there's something that is a template of your fingerprint. If I were to steal that, I now know your fingerprint for the rest of your life. And in fact, you leave these things everywhere. You see my face right now, so I've already leaked that one. You can come and grab the cup I was drinking out of and get my fingerprint. So once these are compromised, they're compromised forever because you can't change who you are. So just sort of to reiterate where we've gotten to with passwords. So in the 1990s, passwords worked pretty good, right? In my life, I had three. I had my Windows password, well, three that I cared about, my AOL password, my Hotmail account, and they were something along the lines of, Chad1, Chad with my birth year, and then, hey, this one's not Chad, right? No one will ever guess it. That was fine. It's pretty unlikely that anyone would actually try to crack those passwords. But in that case, attackers were just blindly guessing and cracking offline credentials, right? So in that case, a stronger password was actually harder to guess and crack. So if I went and gone with Chad1 with something crazy, a brute force attack would have actually been tough. It would have been hard for them to guess the password. But if we look at today, I actually checked my Chrome credentials. I have over 15 usernames that I use pretty regularly, a bunch of dedicated apps on my phone, and I have over 150 saved passwords. So if I'm actually going to remember 150 unique passwords with all of the password requirements, I don't know, I think I'd be considered a genius, but I can't do that. I can barely remember my one. So password managers came out. We're kind of reliant on those at this point if we're going to keep using passwords. But the security community has sort of taken note of this and realized that not everybody wants to remember 150 unique phrases. So the other option we have are hardware tokens. So I'm sure everyone has heard recently, second factor. This is kind of like the big push in the security community. So what this does is even if your password gets compromised, so say you use a weak password, someone guesses it, they still now need to steal the something you have. So it's something you know and something you have. That's where they come with the two factor. So those are the two, typically. You also have these hardware credentials. So the smart cards, your credit card is a hardware credential. That's something you have. And then you have the smartphone, or literally a portable computer. I mean, the iPhone is more powerful than most Chromebooks and things like that people would consider a computer. So you now get this nice portable computer in your pocket that you can also use as a something you have hardware token. And then the biometrics, sort of the popular ones today, are the fingerprint, voice recognition, Face ID. So sort of the whole point of this talk is not to tell you what you already know, but I want to kind of pull back the curtain and show you how these things are implemented, and then show you how the security fails and kind of where we are from an attacker defense perspective. So first we'll look at the simple ones, how a password works. So I have the password in my brain, it's Chad1, right? So now I go to enter it on a computer. So I have the IO of a keyboard, click, 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 I type it in. Now the computer also knows the password because I just typed it in, but I'm communicating with a website. So now the computer is going to go through an encrypted tunnel, send that password to the website. Now the website knows my password, that it is then going to run through a secure hash function that pops out another thing, which is effectively a mathematically secure random number, and then this hash is saved. So next time I come and type the password, it goes through all these same things, and they check the hash against the hash. So they don't store the password for somewhat obvious reasons. So then if they get hacked, the passwords aren't trivially, all there in a text file of, Google doesn't have list of passwords.txt with everyone's password on earth, but you check against the hash. And the way that the brute force attack works is that you would try to break the hash. So you just keep running things through the hash function until you get one. So the problem with these is there's a lot of places an attacker can break this, right? You can attack my brain, so you could try to guess it, or you could try to get it out of me. You could log my keyboard, so you can get a keyboard logger. You could put malware on the computer. You could potentially man-in-the-middle me and break that encrypted channel. On the server side, you could put a malware script that'll get anything that comes over there, anything that I send to the server, or you could try to actually break the password database by, hacking Google, dumping all their password hashes and trying to crack those. So one of my favorite comics from XKCD was, I think sort of embodies the security problem that researchers face. So on the left is what, the crypto nerds and the security guys hope happens. His laptop's encrypted. Let's build $1 million cluster to crack it. No good. It's 4096-bit RSA. Blast. Evil plan is foiled. And then what actually happens in the real world, you see it's encrypted. You say, drug him and hit him with this wrench until he tells you the password. Right? It's in his brain. Get out of the brain. Why are we going to attack the computer? The computer is really secure. The brain and human are weak. So 2FA, right? Brain and human are weak. Let's add something that's not weak with the weak thing. So the password works just as before, but now the server, instead of just saying, yep, logged you in, it's going to send me this random number. And it texts it to my phone, which then goes into my brain, then back out of my brain through the keyboard, then back to the server. And then if it checks it, we all check out, right? I now had the password, plus they sent a thing to my phone, so I should be the only one to ever get that, and I type it back in. The problem that we have here is that a lot of the same channels are open for attack. So once we do the 2FA, the only one you've really removed, the only attack you removed is the brain, because I don't know the number before I log in, so no matter how many times you hit me with the wrench, I don't know it, right? You're not gonna get it out of me. But you can still keylog it. So if I'm typing it in, you can still see me type it. You can still put malware on the computer to steal it. If you had a man in the middle before where you stole my password, you're also going to steal the 2FA code that I type in. If you hack the server, I'm definitely doomed because you're going to get that as well. You can also get it to text it to your phone instead of my phone. So these are called SIM jacking attacks, where you can, the way they do them is pretty low level. You call up panicked, oh my God, I lost my phone. It's so important. I got a new one. My grandma's in the hospital. Please switch the number to this phone. They do it. Boom, break into someone's bank like that. Or I can put malware on the phone. So they do help in the sense that if just my password gets stolen, you can't log in because you need my phone and you need to do more of an attack. But you're only actually removing sort of one element from this whole scenario of attack. So a better solution to 2FA, some of the apps that you see, I know like Google Prompt does it, where you get a push notification and you just hit yes, right? So it doesn't go through the same channel, it doesn't go through the keyboard, but instead what happens there is the server is going to send a challenge to the phone. Ideally, there's an app on the phone, so even if you send it to your phone, it's not paired up, it's not going to work. You send it to a challenge on the phone. Only when the user hits yes on the phone replies, not through the computer that could have been infected. And then you do actually get, sort of this strong second factor where the hacker would have to, get my password and steal my phone. So there is a nice way to do 2FA. The SMS is a huge band-aid. It does help, but not thrilled about it. So other researchers agree with me on this. So there was this reverse proxy tool that came out on GitHub. This is back in 2019, where you can set this thing up and kind of trivially phish both the password and the 2FA code. So the way that this would work is I would send you an email, hey, this is super urgent, log into your Gmail. You go to my fake page that looks like Gmail, you type in your password, I give that password to Google, they send you the text, you type in the code to me, I type it into your bank or whomever, and now I just got both of them in a phishing attack. So it's still very phishable if you can do a man in the middle. So let's look at how tokens work. So if you see in that news article that I posted a slide back, So this tool can bypass traditional 2FA, but doesn't work against U2F. So U2F is made by the FIDO Alliance. This is what the YubiKey uses. I normally have a YubiKey on my desk to like hold up and show you if you haven't seen one, but I don't know where it is. But the idea with the YubiKey is doing that exact challenge response that I said last time, but you have a dedicated little USB stick that you carry around instead of your phone. So if we look at the attack here, and in fact, you don't actually need a password with this. You can use a password, but because you have this hardware security token, in reality, you can just use that to log in. So if we look at the attack surface, it's not the computer, it's not my brain, it's not the man in the middle, but realistically, the server should be able to talk straight to the YubiKey, and then the YubiKey back to the server, and only if you press a little contact on there should it ever work and log you in. So it again reduces the place of attack, but imagine having a YubiKey or a hardware device for every single service that you have. There's some risk to using the same one for everything, but in general, it does help quite a bit, but it's a pain to use. Now you got to carry this thing on your keychain. And the other problem with like these sort of hardware keys that you carry around is that if they have a flaw in them, you need a brand new hardware token, right? So Yubico actually had this. They recalled their FIPS YubiKeys, which are sort of their highest security ones, after a flaw was found. Again, this was last year, back in 2019. But the issue there is that you got to go buy a new one, or they have to mail you a new one. Say they provision 10 million of these things. Now there's 10 million new things, and you don't know who has the new one and who has the old one. So the security vulnerabilities can kind of lay dormant for a long time without anybody knowing. And when they come out, you beat everybody because it's all the same key. So a lot of people like biometrics. I think I get this question the most. Everyone's like, well, just use a biometric and the problem is solved, right? So let's look at how biometrics work. I'm on my computer. I'm going to send a request to a website or whatever, right? It's going to then send a challenge. Let's say to my phone in this case that I'm on my iPhone and I want to purchase something on Thing, and it pops up and asks me for Face ID, right? Do you really want to do this? Do you want to Venmo $50 to your friend? So I present the biometric, and what it's going to do is send back a signed response. So somewhere in the phone, there's going to be some private key, and it's going to be just like a human signature, but a digital signature that would only come from my phone if the biometric was valid. And then it checks and says, yep, whoever owns this phone 100% wants to do the thing that we want to do, so we'll go ahead and do it. So if we look at the attack surfaces here, we have the phone, so the place that we're inputting the biometric, the backend server, and then whatever the biometric is, right? I could fake a fingerprint. There's been a ton of examples of that. You can fake a face, you can fake a voice. Heck, we have deep fakes that fake voices and videos of people, right? It's like now when you go on YouTube, you have no clue if that's real or not. So these are kind of the attacks with the biometrics. Again, seems better than the password, but once it's compromised, can't change it, whereas you can change your password. And the one thing that most people don't think about with biometrics, like I said, you can't give them away. So a lot of times you would want to, I mentioned a case where you want to voluntarily give it away. But there was actually a case, Mercedes had cars that would start with fingerprints. And in Malaysia, what they would do, this is like one gang back in the day, but they would just grab the person as they're going to their car, cut their finger off, and steal their car. So in that case, I would much rather just giving up my keys. The biometric's convenient, but I'll carry a key to keep all 10 fingers. So there's this weird thing where if the thing that you're securing is too high value, if it's more valuable than your life, they'll probably kill you for it, right? So there's definitely kind of a dark side to biometrics, that if they need you, they will probably take you, and dead or alive. So with all of these things, there's sort of this equation, this balance that you have to make with authentication, is kind of how we gotten into this mess. So all the things I've mentioned have this trade-off between security, usability, and cost of implementation. So security is effectively how secure is it, right? We just kind of agree passwords, weak passwords are pretty low security, but the usability kind of sucks, right? Because now we remember all these things, but the cost is dirt cheap. So the whole game that the world is playing right now, and has sort of played since computers came on the scene, is you need to find the right fit. And so the graph here is sort of showing that the value of your asset, as that increases, the security that you apply to it should increase as well, right? So if I have a $500 beater truck, I'm probably cool using just a screwdriver to unlock it and start it. My buddy in North Carolina actually did this with his like old Jeep. But if I just bought a brand new Ferrari, I probably want something a little better than the screwdriver, and they do that, right? And you can see this online as well. It's harder to log into your bank than it is some random site that you use. So in addition, unfortunately, the curve tends to look the same for user burden. So as security increases, so does the burden on the user. So there's no world where it's just as easy to start my Ferrari with any screwdriver I found on the street and get that kind of security. So I've tried to do my best of sort of just generally graphing where all of the current schemes that we use today are in this finding the right fit equation. So you can see passwords there on the far left with high user burden, low security. On the far right, we have things like smart cards and YubiKeys and biometrics that have high security, lower user burden. And then all the way bottom left, there's things like your gate and your voice that have low user burden, low security, but are pretty convenient, right? But it's pretty easy to take a recording of me and mimic my voice. So the goal that everyone has been hunting for is this silver bullet, right? Where you get incredible security and it's just painless to use, like maybe even fun to use. So as a research community, this is what everyone's kind of been targeting. And I think this is why we have so many different authentication methods. We have like more than I can count of different schemes that have come out because everyone thinks they have the silver bullet. And you can see, in my opinion, I think phones are the closest we've got to that silver bullet, that they've actually gotten really usable, and the security in a modern phone is really, really impressive. They've done some pretty cool things from like a hardware architecture standpoint, software on them. I think that we can get close. We'll never have the true silver bullet, but I think we're actually getting there as a community. So there was one other thing in that equation, right? The implementation cost. It's not just security usability, but I'm going to roll this out to the world, for example, or to UCSB, and it's going to cost money. Passwords are free. Everyone has a brain. They can remember them. Smartphones aren't free. If I have to buy everyone an iPhone, my budget just went through the roof. I'm spending $1,000 per incoming student. So let's try to graph the same things on the implementation cost. Unsurprisingly, the two most popular things on earth are the cheapest, right? Keys are super cheap. Buy some brass, go to Lowe's, boom, pop out a new key. Pop out as many as you want, a couple dollars a piece, right? And then if we look, some of the other things that have a little bit higher implementation cost, fingerprints, fingerprint readers are a little higher. At this point, they're pretty mature. Got them on your phone. Keyboards have had them for a long time. Laptops have had them for a long time. And then we get to the upper right where we have things like smart cards, YubiKeys, and smartphones where you're actually building some sophisticated hardware that has a bunch of cool anti-tamper stuff in it so someone can't just steal it and clone it. So that's a big issue. So they do all this cool anti-tamper at like the microelectronics level that kind of drives the cost up because these are used in high security applications. So in my mind, the problem that we have today is that we have too many options and that most of these options are just band-aids. So we're not actually solving the fundamental problem. We're just sort of band-aiding it, right? Passwords are hard to remember. Use a password manager. Oh my God, everyone's password's getting hacked. Like, send them an SMS, that'll solve it, right? So we're kind of band-aiding it, but not solving the core problem of authentication. And in my opinion, more is not better, right? So I typically use a bunch of different things every day to authenticate, right? There's a smart card to get in the door. You have a password to remember. I had an RSA token before. I had a smart card at my previous job. And this makes my life miserable from an administrator's point of view. The more things you deploy, that's the more overhead that you have to manage. You have this, email credentials and then the Active Directory that you're managing and all these different things. And then there's more bugs. There's more places to attack. So it's well known that attackers will always go after the weakest link. And if there's one weak link in your armor, you're done, right? It only takes one exploit for them to get in to your internal network and do whatever they were going to do. So sort of what where I think the future is going, and I've sort of bet my career on it, so hopefully I'm not too wrong, but I really think what we need is flexibility. So we've had a lot of these one-off solutions, right? Passwords are great for websites. They're not great for getting in your house. In fact, I'm not even sure how you would do that, but you could come up with it, but it wouldn't be ideal, right? They're not good for starting your car, those kind of things. But vice versa, a key is not really good for a website. I'm not sure where the slot is in my computer for facebook.com. Like, I'm not sure which key to grab out of my wallet. So I really think instead of creating all of these one-offs, right? This is perfect for X, this is really good for Y, this is great for Z. If we could have one authentication sort of mechanism that we could use for all these different interactions, I personally think that the users would be much happier. And from a security standpoint, we kind of narrow everything down and we can actually secure that one thing really well. I'm a big advocate of using smartphones or a smartphone-like device, but something that's highly connected, has a nice user interface, has all this cool security hardware. So this is sort of my vision of the future, which is a smartphone that works like a Swiss Army knife, where whatever you need it for. You want to make a payment? Boom, here you go. You need a passport? Boom, smartphone can do that, right? You need to log in a website? Got it. Phone? Got that too. Want to get into a house? Bam. So I think that would be a wonderful future. That's what I'm trying to build at my company. And I think we have a pretty viable path there. So at this point, I'll happily take any questions. And yeah, that is my thoughts on the state of authentication. Thank you.
Thank you, Chad, for that really informative talk. Learned a lot for sure. All right, so now we'll be taking any and all questions through the Q&A function. So please feel free to send any questions along so we can field them towards Chad. But in the meantime, what sort of got you interested in authentication in particular, Chad?
I think my inability to remember passwords. I don't know if everyone has this problem where I'm just exceptionally dumb, but it's the level of frustration is to the point where I'm like, this is insane. Why is every day of my life? I started counting when I was working at MIT how many times I had to do a password reset. And even if I remember them, I can't type them. It was once per week. It was bad. I became friends with the IT department. I'm like, we got to do better. This is embarrassing.
Yeah, I think that's kind of a classic entrepreneurship scenario where you just think to yourself, there's got to be a better way. All right, cool. So we have a question from Julia. Can SMS messages be sent to a landline? Because I'm not that comfortable with everything knowing my cell phone number since it's like a tracking device.
I don't know. I don't think so, but I don't see why not. I've never heard of it, but technically I don't see a reason why not. That would be fun. And it would definitely beat some of the SIM jacking attacks. Yeah, I don't know. That'd be worth a Google.
Yeah, I'm curious about that as well. Interesting.
Yeah, it is interesting. So cell phone numbers have now kind of become your identity, over the past decade. It used to be your username or your email, but yeah, everyone now, to prove that you're a human, really. So, because emails can be bots, but bots don't typically have cell phones.
Yeah, this is true. Okay, another question. What do you think of the Google function that generates a strong password and then stores it for you with your Google account?
It's a lifesaver. I couldn't use computers without it. The passwords are supposed to be generated all locally, so there's no risk of Google knowing the password that they gave you. I never actually confirmed that, but I would imagine there'd be a huge legal stink if they didn't. But like I said, I really think that's just a Band-Aid. That's something that we can use for now until we build something fundamentally better. Because there's still the risk there that all of these passwords are stored somewhere on your computer. Someone can hack in, or just steal your master password and poof, they're all gone.
Yeah, definitely. Kind of on that note, I think something that I've heard a lot of people be curious about is the safety of storing your password. So when Google says, would you like to save this password? What are your thoughts on the safety of that?
Uh, I mean, it's no worse than LastPass or any of the other companies, right? So there are ways to implement this where they would never actually be able to see your password. So you would keep, like, they would only be decrypted locally on your computer and you store them in cloud encrypted. I honestly don't know if anyone is doing that. I would assume that they are. I think it's a safe assumption that they don't actually have access to it, but they store some encrypted version and then it's locally decrypted. I mean, that being said, it still has that same problem of like, there is now a list of all of your passwords in every instance of Chrome, right? So it's on your phone, it's on your whatever computers you're using. And if there's one weak link there where they can break it, it's kind of toast. Like there was one recently with LastPass where they could trivially get around the master password with some like really cute attack. And then once they get around the master password, they have all of them. So it's just the like put all your eggs in one basket thing, which I know I'm advocating to do on the phone, but in the phone's case, they're stored in a hardware security module. So they're actually stored in hardware in a place that no software on the phone can touch. It can use it, but it can't steal it, versus storing it in your browser, which a good enough exploit could steal it.
Gotcha. So on that note, question. So do you still recommend using password managers and VPNs, even as band-aids until there is something there?
Yeah, absolutely. That's been I use them. I feel like I don't have an option. I'm building this something better. So every case that I can, I use like our product, but until we have all the features ready, we can interact with everyone else's website. It's like, I don't use a password to log into my computer. I use my phone. I use the phone to get in the office. So we're trying to migrate away, but yeah, the options are limited. I mean, your other option is remember them all, which sounds terrible.
That's for the geniuses.
Exactly.
The next question, what about identity verification? Thinking about the various attacks on knowledge-based authentication like the IRS, but how do you know who you are, or how do you prove who you are to someone who doesn't know you in the first place?
This is a crazy problem. I've actually thought about this quite a bit. So they call this like bootstrapping trust, right? So from a security point of view, you're typically doing this with two devices. So anytime you pair a Bluetooth device and it pops up the number, you're solving this problem. So you need a way that the first time two things meet to say all the other times you meet, you already know each other. So if you've never met someone, there is no known solution to this. And there's actually, my favorite name for an attack in computer security is called the ex-girlfriend attack or ex-boyfriend attack. But the problem is with somebody who knows you that well, in the case of the IRS or whatever, they can answer every single question about you, right? What street you're going? Bam. What's your dog's name? Bam. They'd know everything you knew. And yeah, I was like taught that during my master's, like that is the most powerful attack. If that happens, good luck. So pretty much be careful how much you share with people, I guess is the summary.
Watch out for your exes.
Exactly.
Okay.
They're dangerous.
Yep. So next question. How do you protect your info from the VPN that you're using, for example? So are there encrypted ones?
So VPNs are interesting. They've sort of been advocated recently for use cases they weren't originally intended. So the initial use case of the VPN was I needed to be, digitally at work, even though I was physically at home. So you VPN into work, and then your local network would look like work's local network. So it's kind of a new thing that you would use the VPN to get out, right? And the whole idea is to hide your traffic from your internet service provider. In my mind, I thought that was only for illegal things, but I've now found legitimate interest, like legitimate reasons you want to do that. There is no way to protect yourself from the VPN provider other than encrypting all of your traffic already, which I hope you would be doing with HTTPS and all of that stuff. The VPN is only going to protect you from whoever's in between you and the VPN exit point. But at the exit point, if they own the exit, they're going to see your traffic and see everything you're browsing to.
All right. Next question. So with two-factor authentication methods, using a password and then something like Duo or some token or any sort of 2FA option, is that not as secure as the Swiss Army smartphone option?
Right. So Duo has two different methods, right? So I think Duo can do the push notifications where they actually pop up and you just hit a yes, no, or they can do the random number thing. So the random number thing is still vulnerable to a good man in the middle attack. Because if I can steal your password when you type it into the website, I can steal your random number too. If you do the way where it actually like sends a push to the phone and the phone replies, you never type anything into a computer, that is actually solving the problem. That is assuming it's implemented well and all of that. That in my mind actually does raise the bar significantly. But right now, phishing attacks tend to be the #1 way to steal passwords. So we're not password cracking passwords anymore. We just steal them outright, right? We send you an email, we trick you, you type it in, you give it to us. So if we can do that with your password, we can do that with your random number off your phone. So they add a little bit of security, but they're still vulnerable to those man-in-the-middle attacks.
Right. Another question I saw that came in, do you recommend turning off a VPN on your iPhone?
No, I don't see anything wrong with VPNs. You can get some performance impacts because everything that you do now has to go through the VPN and then to the website you're viewing. So if your VPN is slow, you can get slow internet. But from a security standpoint, yeah, I mean, VPNs are great. They mask your traffic. They let you go torrent your movies or whatever you're doing on your VPN, pretend to be in Sweden to get better Netflix deals. Like, all this stuff's great.
Yep. We love our VPNs. Okay. So Andrea sent along some more details. She was the one who asked the IRS KBA issue question. So she sent that through the Q&A and I just answered it. So now everyone should be able to see those resources that she sent along. So thank you, Andrea, for sending those details. And we'll do a last call for questions before we wrap up a little early. So any final questions for Chad before we wrap up? All right. So with that, we'll end a little early today, which is always a good thing on a Thursday afternoon. So thank you so much, everyone, for coming today. And if you enjoyed hearing from Chad, make sure to check out that event calendar once again, and I'll send it through the chat again. And we have, like I mentioned before, just 1 week left of National Cybersecurity Awareness Month and all of our programming for the UC system. So Chad has one last session with us. He's been doing a lot of fantastic sessions all month, so thank you again, Chad, for that. But the last one will be on Monday at noon, and that's the last Lunch and Learn session all about embedded systems, which was the subject of Chad's thesis, correct?
Yeah, so all of the cool hardware security things I was saying that are built into smart cards and how they protect your routers and phones and things like that once they put them in your hands. So that one's pretty cool.
Yeah, so you can look forward to that and make sure to register on that website via Zoom, and you can add it to your calendar, and you can sign up for all of the final little bits of programming that we have going on next week as we wrap up National Cybersecurity Awareness Month. So thank you again, everyone, for coming today. And yeah, you can also follow at UCSB InfoSec on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, and LinkedIn. And you can find the most up-to-date information about the events that UCSB is hosting as a part of this system-wide National Cybersecurity Awareness Month effort. So thank you again, and we'll see you at the next session. Bye, everyone.
Yeah, thank you so much.
Cheers.